A large dog was limping in the middle of the field. Zina hit the brakes and looked out the open window of the car. The animal was moving with difficulty. Most likely, a paw had been broken. The woman wondered what the dog was doing in the middle of the field, so far from populated areas. She took her husband to the airport to see him off for a long business trip, and now she was returning to her home in a small town. The road for many kilometers around was empty. The nearest villages were far to the south of the highway, so the appearance of an animal looked strange. Suddenly, it dawned on Zina that what if the owners of that dog were also going to the airport? Maybe they had simply lost the animal on the way, but could not return for it, and now the poor thing was wandering in unfamiliar places. Such an explanation both explained everything and pitied the woman, so she decided to help the animal by all means. Zina turned off the engine, slammed the door, and went straight to the lone dog. The animal spotted the potential savior, turned the other way, and actively waddled away. The dog clearly didn't want to be rescued, but Zina was unstoppable. She was like a steam locomotive at full throttle toward her goal. The tactical escape did not bring the beast any success, as it was clearly worse off with its 3 paws than the woman on 2 legs. Soon, Zina caught up with the animal and grasped its neck. A closer look revealed that she was faced with a male dog. The dog looked like a mix of husky and mongrel, and for some reason did not have a collar. The woman's imagination drew the tragic loss accessories in the branches of roadside bushes. Zina firmly decided to help the poor thing. She picked up the not small dog in her arms and carried it to the car. The animal was skinny and bony to the touch. The woman wailed loudly about the plight of the stray and dragged the dog stubbornly, and the dog tried to escape while he stood on the ground, but as soon as he was lifted into the air, he shrieked frightfully and fell silent. The animal cautiously squinted at the ground and tried not to move. Finally, Zina reached her goal. She loaded the dog on the back seat and continued on her way home, not stopping to pity the dog loudly. The dog was still too shocked to be active, so he lay quiet behind her. The car pulled into town. In the evening, the first thing Zina was going to do was to show the injured dog to the doctor. It was a very small settlement, so no veterinary clinic. The woman went to the local handyman of all skills. Ivan spayed cats, treated chickens, set bones, and helped a cow give birth. They even called him when it was necessary to kill a pig for meat. In general, Ivan was a generalist, but people assured that a little bit drunk he generally works wonders. A woman stopped in front of Ivan's yard and honked the bell several times. Soon the owner appeared. He approached the car at an unsteady gait and inquired about the reason for the visit. "Ivan, help me out. I found a dog on the road. He had something wrong with his paw. I decided to take the poor thing to stay with me for a while. Anyway, no husband, bored alone. I'll nurse him. See what you can do." A disgruntled Ivan grumbled that he was being distracted from his dinner, but the cash solved the problem. Ivan swiftly opened the barn, commanded to take the dog there. Zina habitually picked up the dog in her arms, and the dog began to look around wildly. The animal was placed on the workbench. Ivan said that the dog was weak and discovered that his paw was broken. The dog suddenly found his voice. He growled menacingly at the man and gritted his sharp teeth. "Quiet!" the man barked. "Don't you growl at me." I don't know if the dog was frightened or ashamed, but there was silence after this remark. "All right, I'm going to put the bones right and bandage them up, and make sure he doesn't do anything to the bandage. He can't step on the paw yet, so there won't be any displacement." Zina nodded. Ivan thought for a moment, and then said, "And in general, he looks silly. Probably the spring has an effect. Let's castrate him. He'll be homely and sweet at once." Zina thought about how she would cope with the big furry beast and agreed to the procedure. Ivan drank a little and did everything quickly. The dog howled and growled, snapping furiously, but there was nothing he could do. Zina pressed his body firmly against the workbench, and the man made the surgery with precise movements. Ivan quickly treated the wound with leftover vodka, properly folded the bone in his paw, and sent the visitors home. Zina picked up the dog again and drove home. She drove the car into the yard of her house and then carefully carried the animal into the kitchen. Zina took the cutlets and mashed potatoes she had cooked for her husband out of the fridge, and the dog ate them all. Thrilled hostess found the remains of borscht, a sausage, and a piece of lard. Products also quickly disappeared into the mouth of the hungry beast. Zina took out bread and rolls, but the dog refused it. "Right, the good shape must be saved," agreed the woman. Delicious lunch and warmth made the animal sleep. Soon his eyes closed. Zina ate rolls and came up with the idea of naming the pet Raisin, and left the new pet to rest. The next morning, the dog realized that it would be impossible to escape from his caring savior. It was impossible even to step away from her. Zina furiously made sure that the pet did not stand on the damaged paw. She followed him everywhere. At the first opportunity, she laid him on his side and even comforted him with a pillow. Raisin suffered, frankly, but all the menacing growls and barking had no effect. The day gave way to day, but the woman was happy to take care of her pet. Fortunately for Raisin, his mistress had 3 weaknesses that took up a lot of her time. Zina loved to tinker in her little vegetable garden, digging in the soil and replanting flowers. She could spend several hours in this activity, during which time the dog enjoyed blissful silence. Her other weaknesses were talking on the phone with her girlfriends and soap operas. Both took up a lot of Zina's time. Unlike working in the garden, her hands were not busy here, and they also added to the noise effect, which Raisin suffered from, frankly. He disliked loud noises very much, and the dog disliked strangers even more. It did not matter who entered the yard, man, woman, or child. All visitors were greeted by a vicious growl, combined with a menacing grin. Zina read articles on the internet, watched videos, and even consulted by phone with an experienced dog psychologist about the behavior of the dog, but none of the recommendations helped change the situation. Gradually, the guests stopped coming over to the woman's house, preferring to meet on their own territory or resolve all issues over the phone. Raisin in general turned out to be a strange dog. Of all the variety of foods that the woman offered her pet, he preferred raw meat. From the dog food and special bones stubbornly refused, the dog did not know commands and did not want to learn them. As soon as his paw healed so much that Raisin began to run again, the owner began to train him. And here the two stubborn creatures met. Both did not want to give up, and the case did not move from the dead point. Several months later, Zina's husband had to return from a business trip. She spent several days cleaning the house diligently and cooking a refrigerator full of delicious meals. For this period, she stopped giving Raisin increased attention, which made the dog blissfully happy. And then one day, the housekeeper closed the dog in the house, got behind the wheel, and drove a few dozen kilometers to the airport to meet her husband. Raisin had been locked in the house before, but usually the woman would be back in a couple of hours. This time it was close to noon and Zina wasn't there yet. The dog is used to getting a hearty meal 3 times a day, on which he gained a lot of weight, but this time Zina forgot to fill the pet's bowl. Raisin tapped the empty dish with his paw incredulously, then he looked at the table, windowsill, and even in the pantry behind the kitchen. He did not find anything edible for himself there, so he waddled into the corridor to wait for his mistress. It was already evening when he heard the familiar noise of a car. Raisin grumbled with hunger. Finally, the door to the house opened, and the dog hoped for a quick dinner, but then an unfamiliar smell hit his nose. Or rather, this smell was just familiar to the dog. It was present on many things in the house, but never before had the dog met its owner personally. Out of habit, Raisin grinned, bristled, and growled angrily. The man appeared on the threshold. He froze in horror, looking at his wife's pet, then dropped the suitcase on the floor and quickly slammed the door. "Zina, yes, you said that you have a dog, but you did not specify that it is a wolf," peacefully twitching a corner of his mouth, said the man. "Really?" Zina looked at her husband as if he was insane. "It is our dog, Raisin. He doesn't like strangers much, but he'll get used to you, you'll see." Further conversations did not bring results. She was firmly on her side, so the husband had to surrender. He won the right to sleep in the house instead of the pet until morning, so Raisin was sent to the yard for the night. The next day, the man couldn't go outside for a long time because the dog was violently throwing himself at him. Zina's entreaties did not help. The woman, distraught, returned to the house, where her husband was frantically searching for something on the internet. He began slipping his wife photos and videos of wild wolves that growled. very similar, and the animals did not look much different from Raisin, except that they were much slimmer than the fat dog from A Good Meal. Zina was not satisfied with this demonstration. She insisted that Raisin belonged to the dog family. Besides, Ivan was examining the animal. He would have noticed anything wrong. The husband laughed at this statement for a long time, recalling the case when the self-proclaimed veterinarian could not tell the difference between a male cat and a female cat because of the alcohol he drank the night before. To convince his wife, the man contacted a nearby wildlife shelter. He forwarded a photo and video of Raisin to the staff, and a group of zoologists, volunteers, and veterinarians responded by coming in person. They examined the pet at close range and confirmed it was a wolf. Zina was confused and clapped her eyes. She had not expected such a turn of events and did not know what to do. The zoologist suggested they take the wolf to the shelter, where there already were several wolves. Under pressure from her husband and the neighbors who came out to the noise, the woman had to agree. The next day, her husband gave Zina a puppy, even with a passport that said it was a dog, and Raisin found a new home, the quiet and peaceful one he had dreamed of. Want more stories? Welcome to the channel. Here you will be immersed in an atmosphere of coziness and unpredictability. Each story is unique, intriguing, and very heartwarming. We look forward to seeing you on the channel.